Heard. We'll try that again. I was muted, obviously. Good morning, everyone. This is Mayor Sean Patterson Howard, chairperson of the Mount Vernon Industrial Development Agency Board. It is Thursday, August 13th. It is 10:14 a.m. and we are calling the Mount Vernon IDA monthly board meeting to order. Mike, if you can call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, members of the board. Mayor Sean Patterson Howard.
Here.
Dr. Morton.
Present.
Mr. Johnson.
Present.
Councilman Griffith.
Here.
Ms. Vanderpool.
Present.
Thank you very much. Your Honor, we have unanimous, we have a quorum and it's unanimous. All members of the board are present.
Good thing. Okay, you can proceed with the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item is the approval of the minutes of July 9th, 2020. Are there any questions regarding the minutes? There being no questions, is there a motion to approve the minutes as they are in your packet?
To adopt the minutes as approve the minutes as they are in the packet.
Motion by Dr. Morton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Griffith. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? It being unanimous, the minutes are adopted. The next item is a financial report from the treasurer. Dr. Morton.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. As you see in your packet, we gave you a report of the first, second quarter. We also gave you what was balances and everything that we've received as of July 31st. So you'll notice that with the pilot payment revenues, excuse me, that there is a 934 that we have received. That we received in pilot payments to this point. You also look at the balance sheets and notice through all of the accounts, the escrow accounts being $844,990, in our M&T account 773,410, and then Sterling to $1 million. Remember, that was the account that had been dormant for quite some time, in which we actually reactivated in the midst of our forensic, I guess you would call it, or semi-forensic search for all of the resources related to IDA. And then, of course, in our money market and checking account, where most of our pilots are, $1.6 million is there, which most of that is actually going to be expensed out. Really, well, the checks have already been cut to be issued out to the city, the school district, and the county. There's some liabilities, as you will see. It was began to talk about totaling about 1.3 billion or 1.314 50%. So scroll down, basically see the closing cash balance of really $1.6 million. What you should note is that we did pay out the first half, of the second half of 19 to the city, to the school and to the county. So we sent that out to them, as was noted in a previous meeting. We also attempted to pay out to the city their portion as well. Remember that the comptroller wished to have a more detailed report of the past due amounts. So We are now, the mayor just signed, I just signed the checks for the first half of 20, which total to 923,333, which we have received and collected. That translates into 576,898.46. That is going to the school district. 257,979.24 going to the city, and 88,455.30 going to the Westchester County. We do have some, we have two organizations that are outstanding with either all or part of their payment, their pilot payments for the first half. That is Regency Hospitality Linen, owes us $14,719.99. And then also Luciano or Dominican Magic owes us $1,320. And then we will have collected all of the money for the first half of 20. The second half of 20 is basically due now, or actually was due earlier this month. We are going after them. We've received some, but not all of it. We are going to send out those checks to the school district and to the Westchester County. We're going to schedule an appointment to try to submit payments for both the second half of 19 and the first half of 20 to the comptroller. We're going to provide her with a more extensive report, but that shows for the year of 19 and 20, because that's the best that we can do at this point. We are still, when I tell you that we're still unpacking the previous years, we are still unpacking it. So at this point, what we want to do is be able to get rid of, or actually disperse, I shouldn't say get rid of, but disperse the monies for the first that we have received for the second half of 19 and the first half of 20. And that's what we will attempt to do when we meet with the comptroller, as well as that's what we'll do when we send the checks to the school district and to Westchester County. So that's
Treasurer Morton, can you please just repeat the amounts that we are attempting to turn over to the city of Mount Vernon? Can you just repeat that amount again?
Yes. So the amount that we have for the first half of 20 is $257,979.24.
Okay.
That's the amount for the most recent period. I can tell you in a moment, the previous amount was actually part of our previous discussion, which I think is about
182,000.
182,000.
And that 182,000 was due and owing to the comptroller when?
That we were attempting to give.
No, but that was due. The second half of 2019.
Earlier part of this year.
Earlier part of this year.
Earlier part of this year. If you remember, we started to try to submit it. I think it was in May or June.
Right.
Because of COVID and trying to unpack it, it was late. But yes, it's been out for a while.
One of the challenges is that the board for the IDA was dissolved post August 2019. The staff was terminated. There was not a lot of tracking of information happening in the second half of last year. And so when we came in January, we had to reconstitute the board. We had to put in place proper policies and procedures. We had to go and find and unpack paperwork that had been put away and not necessarily always properly filed, so that we could identify the different pilots. It's not as if we came in and everything was in a file cabinet waiting for us to just pick up and move. Things had really been boxed, put away for whatever reasons. The IDA board had been terminated and dismantled, which I understand, but I don't understand why it had not been put back together. So we had to start from far in the rear and then identify all of the pilot contracts, contact them, collect the money, and started to bring that money to the controller in May. But as you said, she rejected it. She rejected the partial payments. She wanted all of the pilot payments at one time. And so she turned back $182,000 back in May. And now we have an additional $257,979.24 that we will be attempting to pay her. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I had it right.
So as we'll continue to contact the pilot holders to receive all of the money. We also are continuing to do our audit of the accounts, the bank accounts, and confirm whether or not individuals or organizations owe money prior to 19. We have a good understanding of what it was paid and what was owed in 19. We have a good understanding of, we know what was in 20, but what we are trying to unpack is what happened prior to 19. In 18, whether or not there's still some money that is outstanding.
Thank you.
Okay. If that concludes Dr. Morton's financial report, we'll move on to new business, of which there are none. So we will move on to the resolutions, old business discussion items. The first item before the board is resolution 8-2020-1, which is authorizing the payment of invoices. Julie Marshall, if you could briefly go over some of the invoices that are in the resolution.
Sure. So there are two invoices. One from the Board of Water Supply for $94.64 and $105.56. Those are water bills that are due for property owned by the IDA. The other invoice is from On Point Image and Design for $215, and that is for some envelopes and stationery ordered for the IDA.
Are there any questions regarding the invoices? There are no questions. If there could be a motion to adopt resolution 8-2020-1.
Move to adopt the resolution 8-2020-1.
Motion by Dr. Morton.
Second.
Second by Councilman Griffith.
Yes.
Okay, great. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The resolution passes. The next item is resolution 8-2020-2, which is authorizing the assignment of private activity bond volume cap allocation and approving the granting of financial assistance. This is regarding a proposed project at Ebony Gardens. I would just ask if Dr. Morton can work to allow video capability for Dave Pearson from Related, who is the project applicant, and also to unmute him so that he can make a presentation following my introduction to the project. This Ebony Gardens is a 144 unit, 7-building apartment complex that's located off South 7th Avenue and West 3rd Street. The primary address is 138 South 6th Avenue in Mount Vernon. The property consists of 36 one-bedroom units, 84 two-bedroom units, and 24 three-bedroom units. Each building contains 2 separate entrances and are 3-story garden-style concrete masonry and wood frame structures with partial basements. The exteriors are primarily red jumbo brick with a pitched roof. The property contains an on-site management office, a community room, and also a laundry room. Related Affordable is proposing to acquire this property, which was originally developed as low-income housing with a project-based Section 8 Housing Assistance Program, HAP contract from HUD for 100% of the units. And the current HAP renewal contract runs through the year 2023. Under that HAP contract, the residents pay 30% of their adjusted income toward rent. The property received an allocation of tax-exempt bonds and low-income housing credits from the New York State Homes and Community Renewal Program in 2004. Related Affordable would be acquiring this property, renew the Section 8 HAP contract for an additional 20 years, and they are looking to enter into new tax-exempt bond and regulatory agreements. The bonds would be issued by the Westchester County IDA for 30 years, which would ensure the continuing affordability for current and future residents. In connection with the transaction, Related will be completing a comprehensive rehabilitation of the property. The projected scope of work includes renovation to 100% of the units, new cabinets, counters, fixtures, appliances, lighting, new bathrooms, flooring, doors, painting, smoke detectors, and electrical outlets. In addition, there will be facade repairs. 8 of the units will be made fully ADA handicapped accessible. There will be boiler and hot water heater upgrades and plumbing improvements. And they're also exploring the feasibility of building a new resident amenity building on an unused surface parking lot, which would be about approximately 3,800 square feet. The bonds that they are looking to secure from the Westchester County IDA is in the amount of $27.5 million. As part of the project, they have negotiated a new pilot with the city, whereby the city would be getting an impact fee of $225,000 in exchange for some modifications to the pilot impact to the city for the first few years. This will provide additional revenue to the affected tax jurisdictions during a time when they need it most, meaning this pandemic. That was negotiated with our assessor, Commissioner Vanderpool, and also Dr. Morton. And that pilot is part of this resolution for approval by the board. There will be a couple of steps that are related to this project. The first is part of this resolution also allocates the agency's volume cap, which is the amount of debt that the agency can issue if it were issuing its own bonds. That amount is approximately $1.1 million, and that will be allocated over to the Westchester County IDA, who will use their allocation of about $26 million, and then whatever else they need to request from the regional council for additional volume cap in order to float the bonds in furtherance of the project. In addition, pursuant to the agreement that we have with Westchester County, the board approves the financial assistance, which includes the pilot that's listed in the resolution, as well as the mortgage recording tax and the sales tax. From here, the current structure of Ebony Gardens is a private housing finance law Article 5 entity. That entity has a direct pilot agreement with the city council. The project contemplates that entity will dissolve, and there will be a new pilot agreement that's entered into with the new entity, and there will have to be some steps that the city council will have to take in the upcoming months to terminate that pilot agreement as we transition to the IDA project. Councilman Griffith was briefed last week, just so that he's aware that there's going to be some additional notices and some steps that the city council is going to take. And I think at this point in time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pearson, who will share with you the details of the project.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the board. As Michael said, my name is David Pearson. I'm a Senior Vice President with Related Affordable. And our group here at Related Affordable focuses on the preservation of existing affordable housing in the context of doing significant renovations and upgrades as we look to extend and preserve the affordability of the properties, also bring to bear new resources to undertake significant renovations on the properties at the same time, to both extend the useful life of the properties as well as improve the living condition for the residents and bring additional amenities to the property. In addition, our plan, which I will talk a little bit about the renovations, Michael did a nice job sort of summarizing a lot of the points that I was going to discuss around the history of the property, but I'll delve into the renovation a little bit more. But we're also planning to bring in a new resident service coordinator to add to our management staff in connection with upgrading the resident service facilities so that we can bring more programming to the residents of the property. I appreciate your time this morning, and I'm not sure if I'm able to share my screen, but I had sent over via Julie Marshall some materials. Do you all have those in front of you?
You should be able to share your screen. Mm-hmm.
Bear with me. All right. Can everybody see that? So I will, this was just a few page summary, written summary that I had started it off, but it's mostly about the history and the proposed transaction that Michael just touched on. So I will skip ahead a few pages here. I think, I presume that everybody in the meeting is familiar with the Ebony Gardens property. And so I will jump ahead here to a little bit about the renovation. We don't have mock-ups yet of what the renovated units will ultimately look like. As we engage our general contractor, we'll do a mock-up unit so that the residents can come through and see what the renovated unit will ultimately look like. But this here is an example of what the finishes will look like in the unit when we're completed. We plan to renovate 100% of the units. This was a property in Cincinnati that we recently completed. And this is a sense here of the typical finishes that are included in the renovation. So it'll be all new flooring throughout the apartment, all new lighting throughout the apartments. In the kitchens, all new appliances, cabinetry, countertops, replacement and upgrading of all the electric outlets to make sure that everything is up to code. Painting, and basically, not going down to the studs unless absolutely necessary, but a complete refresh. A really similar undertaking of renovations in the bathrooms, where the showers and the tubs get replaced, the toilets, the floors, the lighting, vanities. Basically, again, a complete sort of redo of the bathrooms. Throughout the rest of the interior of the units, it's new flooring, painting, lighting, all new windows throughout the entire property. And what we do is everything that we're renovating, we're bringing a new green standard to. So everything will be through the either energy sense or sort of water sense or the high energy efficiency equipment. We're planning to finance this with Fannie Mae financing through the IDA bonds, and Fannie Mae has a green rewards program that has certain benchmarks which require at least a 30% energy savings, 15% of which come through energy and then 15% through water. So we're planning to move forward with that program, which will at least set a benchmark, but we'll certainly try to exceed those thresholds. This is sort of before and after in in the unit after it's painted with the new windows and blinds and new flooring. So we're really trying to bring a significant upgrade to the individual units. And as Michael mentioned, 8 of the units will be brought up to full ADA accessibility. So those units will have a bit more work where likely walls will be needed to be moved and doors widened and a bit different finishes on the cabinetry and the countertops to meet all the accessibility requirements. The property currently has a sort of sub-basement, community room, and management office, which we intend to do a full renovation of that, those spaces, and look for really some new uses for those that will work with our resident service coordinator to bring programming in with some local organizations so that we can do after school programs, workforce programs, and those types of things. So we're still defining what the existing community room space will look like. And as I touch on the our proposal for also a new building to be built on the site for a management office and resident services center that will sort of dovetail into what we're going to do with the existing space. So here's sort of a general outline of the renovations. If you don't have these, it's a lot to go through, but if you don't, you should have these materials as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions. So as I discussed on the bathrooms and kitchens, basically a full renovation in those spaces, general interior with all the items in the unit. We also intend to add Wi-Fi into every unit in the property that will be paid for by the owner and free to the residents. So in these days, particularly in these days with the pandemic, having access to reliable internet, particularly Wi-Fi internet, is so critical. And so that's going to be an additional item that we'll be bringing as a unit amenity. Throughout the rest of the site, we'll be doing quite a bit of site work, working with redesigning the landscaping a bit, particularly those fences that are out there, and making the property have much more curb appeal. We're working with our design architect around, what ultimately will be best there in terms of, do we need the fencing? Do we remove the fencing? And I'm happy to take input from the city on that. But ultimately, the fences that are there don't lock, and I don't know that they're necessarily effective. So wanted to create a much more walkable, appealing place for the residents to have on the site, and also improve the curb appeal. We'll also be working with the current entrances to the buildings to make them more aesthetically pleasing with some canopies over the entrances, getting both of the entrances on either side of the building functioning with new intercom systems and access controls, adding camera and monitoring system upgrades so that we can improve the security at the property, and upgrading all the hallways throughout the units with new flooring and lighting and painting. All the mechanical systems will be replaced. The roofing will all get done. Quite extensive brick repairs and exterior facade repairs throughout the property. Upgrading the fire escapes. I mentioned the windows throughout will be replaced, and then the parking lots will all be redone. We'll also be adding a new playground amenity to the property, and then lastly, what I will describe, and I actually have some better visuals on this, is a new resident services and management office building that we're looking to bring. So I'll actually skip ahead to and then come back. So this is the property. This red area that's boxed in is currently a parking lot that's not actually even used. This street, 8th Avenue, does not go through right now. It's sort of dead ends here, and then there's an additional parking lot for the residents here. doesn't have access all the way through. So right here in this space is where we're looking to utilize the available space for a new resident services building. The floor plan layout is here, and what we plan to do is have a patio in the front. As you walk into the entrance, there'll be a fitness room immediately to the left, a new laundry facility for the residents, and then you'll have the management office here to the left, which will be all the on-site staff. We typically have 3 to 4 full-time staff members that handle income certifications and leasing of apartments and dealing and working with the residents on general management items. To the right will be a new community room with a pantry, and then around back here an area for computer stations. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have a new resident services coordinator who will have her own office, which will be immediately accessible to the community room so that programs can be run in this space. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do have a rendering here, which I will share. And I want to make sure that I have it on the screen correctly. Still figuring out technology. I apologize.
Mayor, while oh, there you go.
I will make this a little bit bigger. So this is the rendering that our architect prepared. This is what we're envisioning for the building right now, which would again sort of take up where a portion of that parking lot is currently, and it runs for about a minute. And we're really excited about being able to bring this in, because not only does it provide more space for the residents and a great space for the residents to come and interact with management, but it also frees up the community, the current community space, so that we can have a secondary space for additional programming for both the either after school programs or more of a workforce development program with some local organizations. We're also likely going to rename and rebrand the property. So we plan to work with the residents on that and have a bit of a contest, if you will, with the residents to solicit ideas for names and have some voting so we can essentially rebrand the property. So I think that's just about it. And I will all right. So I'll sort of pause there. We're excited to work with this group along with the Westchester County IDA to pull together the financing to make this all happen. We're appreciate Dr. Morton and Commissioner Vanderpool's time in reviewing the existing pilot and negotiating terms of a new pilot with the Westchester County IDA. And our goal is to close on the acquisition in late November or early December, and then the renovations would get started as soon as possible in the beginning of 2021. The renovations would last approximately 9 to 12 months, including the newly constructed building. The work will be done, building by building, where typically about 8 units at a time, and we'll work with the existing residents to manage the relocation of them for that period of time, just while the work is in their units. Typically, they're in a unit between 5 to 10 days. And so we'll work with the residents on a plan for relocation just during that short period of time, and then they'll be able to come back to their unit. The units that are getting the full ADA accessibility upgrades will be a little bit longer of a period of time. But again, it's probably 3 to 4 weeks. And again, we'll work with the residents and coordinate that time frame, particularly around schools. And we'll want to make sure, presuming that schools are in session in person, that we don't have any impact on the kids. And so we'll sort of sequence our renovations around those time frames. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there's any information that perhaps I missed.
Okay, this is Mayor Howard. So thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to go back. How much time is it going to take per unit? I know you said 3 to 4 weeks for ADA, but for a regular unit?
Yeah, a regular unit takes between 5 to 10 days.
Okay. So
I mean,
it's 6 weeks.
Typically 5, but it just sort of depends on the conditions of the unit at the time and whether additional electrical work or otherwise is needed. And then I will say there's typically a separate sequence for the windows. So the windows will get done on their own cycle. So there would be an additional visit to the unit for the window work, but that's typically just done in an afternoon on an individual unit.
Okay, and the use of local contractors, what is that going to look like? What is your projection on your use of local contractors, as well as do you have any percentage of set-asides for MWBEs?
Yeah, so those are great questions. So we're working with our construction we have an in-house construction management team, and we've set aside certain goals for local hires and local contractors, and working with the general contractor will be New York based, though not there in Mount Vernon, but it's a general contractor called AMK Construction that will, when you're doing these in-place renovations, tenant in-place renovations, it's a pretty specific sort of sequencing that has to go on. And AMK has worked with us on a number of projects for those that are based out of Brooklyn, and they will work with us in coordinating the local hiring of the subcontractors. So we are starting to do some outreach to find the various subcontractors that have, for the various trades that have the qualifications to work. So it'll be the electric, the plumbing, the painting, the laborers,
and I'm sure we can work with you around that.
Yes. And if there is a specific person at the city in economic development or otherwise that we can work with as a point of contact, that would be great.
Not a problem.
Yeah. And then sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
No, I just have some specific questions. And I know you said you are bringing on a resident service coordination team to provide additional services and resources like after school workforce development, connection to other services that might be in the neighborhood. And you said you'd be doing more around security and cameras and security upgrades, correct?
Correct.
Okay, will your resident service coordinator be able to work with the residents around forming their own maybe resident or neighborhood association. There have been a lot of quality of life concerns
Yes.
in that area, and it's oftentimes residents that are calling to complain. And there has not been a lot of action sometime based on the management company in managing residents. And they say, well, they're not residents here, but they're visiting residents there. And so, you know, there has to be some real rules in place so that 5 or 10% of the residents can't make the rest of the community of residents within Ebony Gardens feel like they don't have any rights. So, you know, we would like to see some increased regulations and rules for your community of Ebony Gardens, and we would like to see them enforced. That's very important. That's very important because while it's affordable housing, just because people live in affordable housing doesn't mean that they do not want a top level quality of life as if they, you know, were living in another neighborhood. So we want to make sure that we are doing what we need to do on the management side, because it's not just the police department side. The management company gets to determine who moves in. The management company gets to determine who stays, and the management company gets to determine the security and the rules that are going to be established and enforced. I grew up in, you know, the plaza, and so lots of apartments, and we knew what the rules were, and if you didn't follow the rules, and if you caused too many problems to the community, then you were invited out. And I don't see that happening maybe as often. And I think the residents of Ebony Gardens deserve to know that the management company is going to ensure the safety of the community that they're living in.
Yes, I appreciate all those points, and yes, so the house rules were over the last 6 months redefined and redistributed to the residents, and we're looking very closely as part of this transaction at our tenant selection plan to make sure that we have pretty stringent guidelines. It is a project-based Section 8 property that has oversight from HUD. But we do have, you know, some flexibility within those guidelines to ensure that we're getting high quality residents. And like you said, it's about enforcing house rules. We have over the last, you know, I would say last year, we had a lot of management transitions and challenges in terms of personnel. And it took us a while to find new solid people at the site on a management perspective to do the job correctly. I think that there's been improvements there. We're still building out the management team, and one of the big reasons to have a resident service coordinator is not only to implement programs, but also be a person that can be an advocate for the residents with management.
Absolutely.
And
no, I'm very impressed. You know, I've worked with HUD housing and programs going, you know, back over 25, almost 30 years now. And I really enjoyed when they put into place the ROSS program, the Resident Opportunity Self-Sufficiency Program. You know, so I would love to see some of that work and the resident coordinator there. I'm pleased that you're putting in a community center. I saw that there's some computer areas there. You're talking about after-school programs, updating the amenities. I saw that there was a fitness center located on that plan, and that really can impact the health and wellness of the residents. So I'm definitely pleased with that. One of the things that I'm also pleased with you looking to improve the curb appeal and making it aesthetically pleasing. One of the things that I have concern about is oftentimes while it is still a HUD-based program and while 30% of the adjustable income is still the norm, I am just also concerned that we're not going to use this opportunity of renovation as a time to kind of displace families that are there, because I've seen that happen in similar projects. And so I want to make sure, I mean, if they're not good families and they're not following house rules, then this is an opportunity, you know, then you displace them based on house rules. But I just want to make sure that the renovation is not going to be an opportunity, because 30%, you could say, well, 30% of people who make this income, or 30% of people who are at a higher level of the HUD eligible status. And so, you know, we just want to make sure that we are not going to utilize this to displace people based on maybe being at the lower economic strata of the HUD guidelines, and just replace them with people at the higher economic strata of the HUD guidelines. So we just want to be careful about displacement due to economic reasons.
Yes, and I can assure you that there will not be any permanent displacement of residents other than for house rules and other things as you described, and that would happen in the normal course of business. But everybody that is a resident there throughout this renovation, it will be a very short temporary relocation, and they'll have the ability to come back to their unit. So there will not be any, you know, all leases get renewed. Everybody will be able to come back, and nobody's going to be displaced during the part of this. And as you said, so as we renew the project-based Section 8 contract for a new 20 years, we are getting a rent increase under that HAP contract that will help support the new financing. However, the residents' portion of their income of their rent will be the exact same. So there should be no change to any of the residents' rent because it's calculated, as you said, based 30%. On 30% of their adjusted income. Mm-hmm. So there won't be any change. And I will say that I think our management company over the last 3 to 4 months during this pandemic has done a good job of working with the residents in a safe manner to do interim income recertifications as people may have lost jobs or had change in their financial situation, to make sure that the burden of rent gets placed on HUD where appropriate if somebody has lost a job or had a change in their income. So we try to work with the residents proactively to ensure that they're never paying more than 30% of what their actual income at any given time is.
Perfect. Okay. I don't know, does anyone else have questions? And while people are being dislocated so that their unit can be renovated, do you have a certain number of vacant units right now that you'll be able to move them into? If your housing is full right now, where will you move them while you're renovating their units?
Yeah, so we're going to look to potentially hold a handful of vacants offline so we can do essentially on-site quote unquote hotel units. I don't think that we'll probably have enough to do that. And so what we do is we will provide for a hotel, which we'll pay for. We'll pay a stipend as well so that people have money to have food and transportation while they're in the hotel for that week. We also give the residents an opportunity that in lieu of going to a hotel, if they have family that they would prefer to stay with during that time, we provide a stipend in lieu of paying for the hotel. So it really works on an individual household basis of what works best for them. And particularly folks that have mobility issues or children around school will look to utilize the hotel on site or the hotel units on site as opposed to the relocation to an off-site, actual hotel. So our management company and the construction management team will work hand in hand as we get a concrete schedule of, building by building and work with the residents. We provide sort of a general notice when we acquire of what's going to happen, and we'll find a way to meet with the residents during this time to communicate it. And then there's 30-day notices that go out to the residents, and then 2-week notices that go out to the residents, and then 7-day notices. And then the residents, and then management is checking in with the residents a day or two before to make sure that they're ready to vacate their unit for this, short period of time, and helping them with the relocation.
Okay. Thank you.
Dean, did you have something that you wanted to say? You got to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, hello board, and Dean Bailey, Mount Vernon resident. Mr. Pearson, I had 2 questions for you in here. With the project, the renovation, do you have a green sustainability design that's incorporated into that? And do you have a savings projection with that design?
So we will. I don't have it yet. So we're getting what's called like a green energy report done right now, which will basically lay out for us recommendations of items that we can do to save both energy and water consumption. And then we will ensure that those are included in our scope of renovation. I would say that they typically are already included in our scope of renovations, but if they have additional recommendations, then we'll incorporate those. It's everything from, high efficiency mechanical equipment to high efficiency refrigerators, and then low flow faucets and shower heads, and less gallon per flush toilets. So those are all things that we incorporate into the renovation. And I can certainly share that report once it gets done. We've just engaged it recently.
Okay, thanks. I had one more question. I'm sorry, I don't want to take a lot of time. But you said that the renovation is going to have internet in every unit, and that it's going to be paid for not by the residents. What is your selection criteria for who we use versus Spectrum, Verizon? What's the criteria or the process that you have for that?
Yeah, there's actually a company called Spot On that we've worked with on a number of properties similar to this, where they will work with us on the whole wiring of the property for that, and then we pay a fee to them monthly for in addition to building out the infrastructure with them to pay for it. And it's usually points, the Wi-Fi points will be sort of through the hallways, so that they have access into the various units, and they do a whole design around it.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with them. They're actually very good. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, they've been great to work with.
Thank you. All right. Any other board members have any other questions at this point?
I just like to comment and say, I'm very excited about the project. I think the residents over there are deserving of a good project. And as usual, the chairwoman dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's and the questionings that I had. So we're looking forward for you to get to work.
Absolutely. I mean, Councilman Griffith?
Well, Madam Mayor, if you wanted to go ahead and respond to Brian, you can do that. I just have my questions are related to what the approval process is from here and how the council is affiliated with this and what the council has to do at the next stage. That may be, that's going to be a different approach that we need to convince people with. So, so maybe Michael, you can go ahead and just give me an idea of what we're up against there.
Sure. So just in terms of next steps, the next step will be the Westchester County IDA at their next board meeting, which is September the 10th, will have a cost benefit analysis presented to them that they're working on right now, where basically there's an analysis of the financial assistance that's being provided for the board to consider. In addition, the board will pass what's known as an inducement resolution, which authorizes the next steps of the project. It's not a final resolution, but just allows us to proceed. One aspect of this project is that the county IDA is looking at 2 affordable housing projects that need bonds for this year. Mount Vernon's allocation as part of your resolution is going to be for this project. It's not going to be for the other project, but the county on its own doesn't have enough volume cap or authority to issue debt to meet both projects. So they are going to have to ask the regional council for additional volume cap allocation. So that's why it's a little important for us to sort of move quickly in the tail end of this year to meet the timetable to close before December. After that inducement resolution is passed at the September meeting, there will be a public hearing that is scheduled where the public will be invited to participate. In addition, there'll be a 923A notice that goes out to the mayor that indicates unless the city has an objection to the project within the next 30 days, we intend to move forward and finalize the project. Then there will be a final resolution that's adopted by the Westchester County IDA to authorize the financial assistance, and that will probably be in the October to November timeframe. As a parallel track to all those approvals, there will have to be some action taken by the City Council, councilman, and we'll work with the Corporation Council to get the proper legislation for the council. That legislation would terminate the existing pilot with the existing Article 5 entity, and that Article 5 entity would dissolve as part of this transaction, and the related entity that's being created will be the new entity that's operating the property on a go-forward basis. So really all of these things will occur within the end of quarter 3, which is September 30th, and the end of quarter 4, which is December 31. That'll just give you a little snapshot of the things that have to be done.
So,
Michael, I remember on the call we asked for a checklist of all the things that the City Council does. I'd like you to broaden the memo to enumerate all the additional steps that you just said, so I could share them with everyone.
Dave's counsel did provide that to me, and I'm happy to broaden that memo so that you have all the steps available to you, both on the county IDA side and then also the city side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question goes back to the council, Michael, and why is the council approving an IDA transaction?
It won't be approving an IDA transaction. What it'll be doing is it'll be terminating the existing pilot agreement to facilitate the new pilot agreement taking effect. Mr. Pearson has to dissolve the existing corporation that is running the project as of right now. And that corporation has a direct pilot agreement under the private housing finance law with the city, which was adopted by the City Council. So the City Council's piece in this transaction is simply just terminating that pilot agreement. But we want to make sure we do it in a way that when that pilot agreement terminates, the new pilot agreement with the Westchester County IDA takes effect so that there's continuity.
Okay, so understand my confusion. The council usually doesn't approve pilots. So are you saying that this pilot was done so far back, it was done pre-IDA?
So there's some affordable housing projects that aren't IDA projects where there's an ability for the applicant to apply to the City Council and receive a pilot through the City Council as opposed to going through the IDA. So this project was never an IDA project. It was an Article 5 project, for lack of a better.
The current pilot was from 1981. And then it was extended in 2004 for an additional 20 years. So it runs currently until 2041. And so that's part of, I think, why it's with the City Council is because it was from 1981.
Okay, so I don't mean to chain on these questions, but if it's a City Council pilot, who's collecting the pilot payment? Who's collecting the pilot payments that were supposed to be going in through the City Council if it's not the IDA? And has this old entity been making those payments? Or should we ask these questions at the council level when it comes to the council? Because I'm going to ask them.
Yeah, we've certainly been paying. The way the current pilot is set up is that it fixed the assessed value of the property. And so we're paying based on the mill rates at the time, based on a fixed assessment. But we are current on all of our pilot payments. I will get information. I'll check with my accounting firm, our internal accountants, and just get evidence of sort of where those payments are going to confirm.
So you're telling me that even though it was a pilot payment, you were pretty much paying the assessed value, and it's possible that you're paying that to the city's controller?
I believe so.
Okay.
We get tax bills. I mean, we get tax bills every year, and there's a fixed assessed value at it. There's actually three tax parcels for which we get billed that encompass the property. So we get three separate bills for those, and then I don't do the direct payments myself, so I don't exactly know where they go to, but I know that we've been paying the tax bills that we receive.
Okay.
If I may interject, Councilman Griffith, yes. They are paying on a current assessment, just as if it's market value for city, county, and school and library. And I'm assuming that they pay it to the city controller, to Westchester County Tax, and to the Mount Vernon School District. And from my understanding, I had looked it up, they are current with their payments, with their tax payments.
So let me ask one last question from the council's perspective, and I think this relates, since I'm on this IDA board, probably because I'm on the city council. Michael, Mr. Curdy, are you telling me that the council can do payment agreements without going through the IDA?
With regard to certain projects under the private housing finance law, yes. But insofar as this project is concerned, they're not pursuing that. They're pursuing an IDA project. So the answer to your question, Councilman, is it depends. With regard to this project, back when they first applied back in the 80s, that's the way that they pursued it. But they're not looking to proceed forward as an Article 5 project any longer.
Private housing finance law.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I will let you all get back to your other business, and I very much appreciate the audience and the time, and hope everybody's safe and healthy. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer and can follow up with me subsequently if anything comes up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, the resolution is 8-2020-2. Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve resolution 2020-2.
Motion by Mr. Johnson. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Ms. Vanderpool. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? There being none, the motion is adopted. The next item is resolution 8-2020-3, authorizing the negotiation of a non-binding letter of intent. Dr. Morton, I don't know if you want to briefly speak on this resolution.
Sure. Yeah, as you know, I think it was about in the last meeting or so, we approved the director of business development position for the IDA, and that is the individual that's going to actually work with our businesses in developing, helping to provide technical assistance and developing their businesses, growing the economics of Mount Vernon, in addition to also compliance, especially given new regulations around COVID and its impact upon the economy in Mount Vernon and our small businesses in particular. And so as a part of that, we have moved forward with identifying a person for that position. In order to do so, we needed to then begin the onboarding process of making sure that we set up all the payroll, the benefits, including retirement and health benefits. As an economy of scales, it was prudent for us to look at the possibility of either, creating a partnership with the city or with some other governmental agency in order to, for the scale, seems like we're talking about one employee, possibly maybe two at some point, to make sure that we don't actually add additional costs to that. So in that, what we have done is approach the Board of Water about them taking a staff person on their health, and we would then they would then bill us, we would reimburse, and we would pay them for it, rather than opening up a whole new health program for 1-2 employees. So in order to do that, we need approval of this agency in order to enter into that agreement with the Board of Water Supply, with the understanding that they will put the staff person on to their health insurance, and they will bill us. We will pay them. And note, we have vetted it all through all of the legal. So this is not illegal. This is legal, all right, for us to do. But it also saves us from having to have additional cost, you know, that we don't need. While I'm saying that, also note that but we won't be able to do that with the retirement. The retirement will have to be independent. So we are reopening up the retirement and the workers' compensation. So that's happening, but that's normal process.
Yes, and these two resolutions, 8-2020-4, that item would approve an amendment to the procurement policy to enable us to have a contract not only under New York State and also County of Westchester contracts, but also City of Mount Vernon contracts, which would enable us to enter into an agreement with the Water Board to reimburse them for any expenses incurred in terms of providing the benefits. And the second item is the actual appointment of the Director of Business Development. Are there any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions?
No.
I just want to say one thing. Like you said, with COVID, we have seen the closing of a lot of our local businesses. We know that a lot of our small businesses are struggling. And while Mount Vernon is going to have limited resources to provide some support and assistance to our small businesses, we want to make sure that we have a point person who is helping to connect them to county, state, and federal resources, not just through state government, but through all of the subcontractors that the state and county and federal government have to help our small businesses. Also, with COVID, we want to make sure that our businesses are in compliance. We have below 20 active cases of COVID in Mount Vernon. And with all of our businesses being reopened, we want to make sure that they are following proper protocols that continue to keep the spread low. And then finally, you know, this person will also be working with our Quality of Life Task Force and our Buildings Department and our Finance Department to make sure that all of the businesses that are in Mount Vernon are licensed, are registered, have proper certificates of occupancy, proper certificates of tenancy, and that they're also registered as a business with the New York State Comptroller's Office, and that we are collecting taxes on these businesses. We have a lot of businesses that open quietly and are not connected and are not following basic rules and regulations. And because we have not had anyone dedicated to monitoring this for many years, we are losing out on tax revenue. And we have businesses that might be operating without proper licenses and certifications. And so in order to secure our tax revenue and to ensure that we are securing the health, wealth, and welfare of our residents, we want to make sure that all businesses that are operating within the jurisdiction of Mount Vernon have been properly vetted, and that we are providing them with technical assistance and not just compliance. We don't want to punish or injure our businesses, but we want to help make sure that they are sustainable and that they are operating in full compliance with all of our local laws and ordinances. So that is what this person will be focused on, not just COVID, but making sure that we have a solid business community. And that's something that we have to take care of out of the IPA, which it's designed to do. That's it.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll begin with Resolution 8-2020-4, which is approving the amendment to the procurement policy to allow the agency to contract with the City of Mount Vernon and its affiliated agencies from time to time and as appropriate. If there's a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by the councilman, second by Dr. Morton. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposition? There being none, the resolution passes. The next item is Resolution 8-2020-5, which is the appointment of the Director of Business Development. Is there a motion approving the resolution?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Morton. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition?
Aye.
There being none, the resolution is approved. The last item, Dr. Morton, I don't know if we want to take this up today. It's authorizing the negotiation of a letter of intent regarding MVP. I don't know if you want to speak to that issue.
Sorry. The next one is what?
The authorizing the negotiation of the letter of intent with regard to MVP, certain properties of the IDA.
Okay, yes. So what I at least wanted to put it on the agenda because it came into the office, received it. That's for the history, I guess, around this, for in case someone doesn't know, and also for the public. And this has been a project that has been in play for a good 15 years, maybe, I guess, right? It's about the South 4th Avenue and 3rd Street project, right? And as part of them moving the project forward, there are properties that are, owned by IDA, by the city of Mount Vernon, and by URA. And so in order for them to move the project forward, they needed to put in a request for purchase of those properties. And that is the letter that we actually received from them. They have sent 3 letters to each of the owners, meaning the city, the URA, and IDA. So for this body, those properties are those that are on South 4th Avenue, as you see in the communication, that they are submitted an offer to that, to purchase those. And so wanted to at least have a discussion with this board about that, and then we can decide on how we want to dispose of it going forward. What we do know is that the city is going, for the properties that the city owns, the real estate committee is going to have to take that and determine if they're going to move forward with an appraisal of those properties. What we do know also is that URA has a property that's on South 5th Avenue and 3rd Street, is also tied up also in a foreclosure loan from HUD. So we have been talking to HUD about making sure that we have the right process for that property that right now is, a property that we need to actually get rid of. And then also there's some back taxes on that property that need to be resolved. So URA will be that issue. The city will be dealing with its with properties that belong to them, and then we as IDA are going to review what is submitted to us and determine if we believe that that is a good I guess if they give us a good offer for the properties.
On this issue, I just want to say that it's almost criminal that it's taken us 12 to 15 years to address the most blighted part of our city. That 4th Avenue and 3rd Street corridor has been empty for a long time. It's an eyesore, it's blighted. There are dangerous conditions from buildings there, just from people hanging out there. We continue to talk about needing to ensure that we have homeless housing, or that we have housing for our our living wage workers, or our workforce people. And this Urban Renewal Agency project is an opportunity to do that. So whatever we have to do between the council, the real estate committee, the Urban Renewal Agency, the IDA, and the controller's office, this is collaboration that needs to happen. Just as Memorial Field has sat there in ruins for a long time. This neighborhood has sat there in ruins for a long time. And we can't blame the people in the neighborhood for this square block being like this anymore. This is because of inaction, lack of cooperation, lack of coordination, and we have to find a way to resolve it. This project can bring in a good amount of housing for the people of Mount Vernon who need it most, for people who are doubled up. So we're not looking necessarily to bring new people into the community. We have a lot of families that are precariously perched on the brink of homelessness, that are doubling up with friends and family members right now. And this is an opportunity to provide housing that is affordable to that population, to bring in new retail in that area, to increase our tax revenues for the city, and to provide jobs for our residents. And that's what urban renewal projects are about. This is about urban renewal and urban revitalization. And I look forward to working with the council, the IDA, the URA, the real estate committee, and the controller, and finally bringing this project, like we said, with Memorial Field across the goal line, because it is definitely needed in Mount Vernon. We can talk about nice housing around the train stations, but this is the center of our city. And it's just as important as any other project that we have on the board. Council.
I just want to make everybody aware that I fully agree that this is going to be a coordinated effort by all of our agents. But I want this body to be fully aware that in order for the city council to release any properties, everybody should be muted.
Yeah, if you can repeat everything you just said, because we didn't hear anything.
Sure.
Brian, can you mute? Stephanie, can you mute? Everyone on the phone, can you mute your phones, your lines?
Can you hear me better now? Okay, great. So to say that this is a coordinated effort, I think this is going to be a bigger coordinated effort than Memorial Field, right? Leaving it to ourselves to do it, Memorial Field did not work. We basically had to give away the baby in order for Memorial Field to work. Having 3 agencies of the city coordinating to make this work is going to be monumentous. From the city council's perspective, from the city properties alone, I've said repeatedly, having 4 votes of the council as a supermajority for selling properties is going to be difficult to overcome. Right? So if there's a difference between selling city properties for city use is one thing. I understand 4 votes to sell City Hall, but properties that were taken by foreclosure, you should not need a supermajority. This is something that we may want to look into having a referendum on to change, because if the council does not fully agree, or at least have 4 strong votes to sell these properties, they're going to be held until we have a council of 4 votes that is willing to sell city properties. I've said this before. I've been very firm about it. I'm going to keep repeating it to everybody that needs to hear it. A supermajority to sell foreclosed properties, I think, is wrong, because it may not happen, and it could hold up this project and all the other projects around the city that probably need to be sold. So we should think about having a referendum for that.
Well, and I would agree with you. One of the challenges, like you said, that we have is not being able to get that supermajority. And I'm concerned because electeds that say they want affordable housing, electeds that say they want the community to have a better quality of life, electeds that say that we owe it to provide housing and support for the working class poor, or just the working class, those who cannot afford market rate, to continue to sit back and stand on ceremony and not support projects like this. It's disingenuous. The city continues to be responsible for maintaining these properties, which they don't. And that causes the blight of a neighborhood to increase. And so there is no, you cannot say, well, we don't want to give pilots. The city owns these properties. The city is not maintaining them. The city is not receiving any tax benefit, whether it's at market rate or at a pilot rate for them right now. You continue to see increasing crime in these neighborhoods. And so I think we need to make sure that our electeds fully understand the impact, because you would not allow a project like this in your neighborhood to stay vacant and unattended to for this many number of years. I don't care what excuse you use. I personally live 2.5 blocks away from the urban renewal site. I am a South Side girl on 3rd and 5th. And so if this were in your neighborhood, wherever you lived, you would not want it there. And so you cannot continue to make excuses and try and find different verbal mechanics and gymnastics to explain why you don't support this property. The building on 3rd Street and 5th Avenue is a deplorable shame, and you are not going to be able to collect taxes from an agency of the city that cannot pay that money. So to continue to stand and say that you are being a fiscal agent of the city, this property in the next few years could collect all of the taxes that we've been losing over the last few years. Every month, every 6 months, every year that we refuse to sell this property so that it can be redeveloped, the city loses money. We increase our expenses because we have to continuously replace scaffolding and update scaffolding and deal with sewer issues and people who are living in this abandoned building, and the city is not maintaining it. Honestly, city properties right now are under the management of the city controller. And we have received constant complaints that these properties are not being maintained. They're not supposed to be maintained by the Department of Public Works. They are under the supervision and the direction of the controller's office as the superintendent of these properties. And the controller's office has a budget to maintain these properties. And if you're going to hold on to properties, if you're going to refuse to sell the properties at auction, if you're going to refuse to sell the properties so that this development property, can come into place, then you have to maintain it. We have to stop playing politics. We have to stop the double talk and the double speak, because it is the people of those neighborhoods that are most impacted. And 3rd Street has been an eyesore for too long. And that is why so many people on the South Side feel that the city does not care about the South Side. And look, I'm gonna say it, and I thank my partners, many on here who live on the North Side, for your support on this project, but there are others who don't live on the South Side who take a very distant view of what they feel needs to happen. And I don't like to talk South Side and North Side politics here in Mount Vernon, but this project could not sit like this in Fleetwood. It could not sit like this on Grand Street. It could not sit like this on Lincoln Avenue. It could not sit like this in the Heights. But we have allowed it because of politics and posturing to remain a blighted community, and we can no longer do this. So we're going to need the help of the residents to definitely stand up, and we shouldn't have to wait until the next election to vote in the appropriate people. We should be able to bring pressure to bear on those who are currently in office. And so some of them have said, you have the bully pulpit, I'm going to use it. But when I use it, it's going to start to point out to your lack of genuineness, your lack of concern, your lack of understanding, your lack of involvement, and your lack of understanding of the impact of this project sitting like this. You cannot continue to not come to meetings that we need your vote. You cannot continue to abstain with really no reason, and you cannot just vote no in an arbitrary and capricious fashion. So if you want me to use my bully pulpit, understand that I'm prepared to use my bully pulpit to make sure that this project moves forward so that we can see the center core of our community revitalized, restored to the tax rolls, jobs brought into the community, retail businesses, neighborhood services provided, and for housing that is so greatly needed for many of our families that are doubled up and who are struggling to be brought finally online. So that's my bully pulpit for today.
And Madam Mayor, I just want to be clear to the folks that like to look at Zoom. You were not speaking to me. I just want, right? I'm going to say it for you. I'm not the one that you're talking about.
No, you're not.
I have been fully in support of this. the work that this entity that is assembling these properties, they've spent a tremendous amount of money legally designating this area as blight. That provides them, not we think it's blight, technically blighted, which well, yes, it clearly.
Well, I'll be clear when I make my comment. Councilman Griffith, Councilwoman Copeland, Councilman Thompson have been very supportive of this project, and maybe other people who were on the council before. Right now, we need to find out where Councilwoman Duarte is, because I'm really not sure where she is on this project, but that's a fourth vote. And Councilwoman Farquharson has not been supportive of it. So we need to be clear, and I am being clear, that this project needs to move forward, and we need to address those who are blocking it. Thank you.
So also, I just want to say that I am prepared, from being the senior council member, to take bold actions to correct our wrongs, things that are getting in the way. I'm prepared to revoke the entity called the real estate, to revoke the real estate committee, because that needs to be done to move things forward. I think the new IDA director that you are preparing to hire can quantify for not only people on the south side, because they can see it, but people on the north side, how these empty, blighted neighborhoods are producing no tax revenue to help reduce their property taxes. This is a mathematical decision that we're making to help build the tax base in the city of Mount Vernon. People don't understand it, and we need to.
It's a mathematical decision, and it's a safety decision.
That's correct.
Jesse Van Loo of Save Mount Vernon, calls me constantly, and other residents and different neighborhood associations are calling and saying that these city-owned properties, some of them are city-owned, some of them are bank-owned, some of them are LLC-owned, but that is why we received a grant from the state AG's office to deal with the zombie homes in Mount Vernon, but we cannot have Mount Vernon properties being unattended to. We cannot have Mount Vernon properties being used for, what do you call them again? People who just stay in, go in, squatters.
Squatters, right.
Squatters. We know that in some of these abandoned homes that drug activity and other things are happening, and they're next to daycares. So we want to make sure that those are not city properties. We're working on addressing bank-owned properties and LLC properties, which are very hard to kind of get to sometimes because of the way they're set up. But we need to make sure that there are no city-owned properties that are being kept in a deplorable condition, and that squatters are not living in there, and that they're not causing a public safety concern in the city of Mount Vernon. And unfortunately, the mayor's office does not control those city properties. The city council does not control those city properties. It is the sole responsibility of the comptroller's office to manage, to maintain, and to help the city dispose of those properties and bring them back onto the tax roll. And that has not been done. And it's time that it's done. And we're going to lay the responsibility right at the doorstep of where it is. And I don't need to make a fancy professional video to say that. I can say it very clearly right here in a meeting, period.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to just offer this in addition to that. I'm not sure where Councilwoman Duarte sits on the entire project itself. What I will say is that I have been in communication with her about trying to move at least the property that is at Fifth Avenue and 3rd Street forward. And she has been fully supportive of getting that off the tax rolls and done so that it can move forward. So I think probably having a conversation with her about the whole project, we may be in better position to see where this is moving as swiftly as possible.
And I think if for the next IDA meeting that we can have some type of PowerPoint presentation ready, similar to what we did today with the Ebony Gardens project, so that people can see, so that the community can see the project that we are trying to bring to the center, to the core of our city, to the most blighted neighborhood of our city, to transform. People are seeing transformation around train stations. They're seeing transformation in different neighborhoods. And that is why the community continues to cry out and say that they want to see the same level of attention put into the neighborhoods that most impact them as it is to neighborhoods that they don't feel they'll ever have access to. And so I think it's time that we reintroduce the urban renewal project to the city of Mount Vernon, to the residents, so that they can understand, regardless of what neighborhood that they live in, how beneficial this project and how essential this project is to moving Mount Vernon forward, not just for some, but for everyone.
And if Councilwoman Duarte is prepared to do that, then she needs to call the chair of finance and planning on the council so that we can get that done. I would love to know that we have the support of the council to move forward on some of these things that we've been holding for way too long. I need a fourth vote to make these things happen. I cannot do it myself. I'm a part of a body. Madam Mayor, I don't have the control that you have. I have other elected officials that I need to fall in line in order for us to move forward. It's not me. I've been begging for this. I've been pushing for this for the 15 years when this project was started. So thank you.
We have properties on McQuestion that we require the same thing. We have properties on 2nd Avenue that require the same thing. So we really need to work with you, to support you, Councilman Griffith, in getting that fourth vote so that we can take care of some of these very large projects that need to move forward, that are going to benefit and provide the greater good for the residents here in Mount Vernon.
So I guess the question is, so what do we want to do with this? I guess that is before us today. Are we holding this off for the next meeting and asking for them to come with a presentation?
I'm prepared to move it forward.
I'm prepared to move forward as well, although I think a reintroduction, as the mayor indicated, would be nice. But I'm prepared to move forward today.
I think, as we stated, that we, as the, we're looking for cooperation. So as the IDA, if the majority of us agree that this needs to move forward, then we can be the one that takes the first step in moving it together forward, and then invite the other bodies through URA, through the controller, through the council, and through the real estate board to help continue these projects forward.
My understanding is that this is just authorizing kind of the chair to be able to enter into non-binding, right?
Right.
What it is, Michael?
That's correct, Chief. It would be non-binding, and we would make sure that the final document had, whatever language to ensure that we had that flexibility going forward.
Okay.
Right.
So then I'll move to adopt the resolution.
I'd like to second that, please.
Okay. Second by the councilman. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There being none, the resolution passes. The last item is the report of agency council. I'll be very brief. The agency is under an obligation, as you all know, to annually report our job creation and retention figures, our sales tax exemptions, our mortgage reporting tax, and our pilot exemptions to the New York State Comptroller and also the authority's budget office. Reporting is past due for calendar years 2018 and 2019. Under the project agreements executed between the company and the agency, annual reporting of all this information is required, as I stated. Letters were sent to all active IDA projects in March of 2020, requesting completion of the annual compliance reports for 2018 and 2019. Of the 19 active projects of this IDA, approximately 6 companies provided the requested information. In July, we followed up on our letters from back in March to the remaining 13 projects, requiring all outstanding reports and supporting documentation to be provided by July 31st. We've received 9 responses. There are only 4 companies that have reports outstanding. 2 of them Dr. Morton talked about earlier, one being Warren Place Real Estate, which is American Christmas. The second being 160 East 3rd, Luciano Brothers Dominican Magic, Regent Hospitality Linen Services, and the last one being Zionport Apartments LP. Our next step is to send a final demand letter should compliance reports not be provided by the August 31st deadline that we'll provide in that letter, we may consider canceling and also suing these entities to recapture any benefits that are provided. So we just wanted the board to be aware that we are taking action to make sure that we have all the Paris reporting complied with by year end. I'll also note that we did receive the audit from 2018 that was prepared by Galieros and Robinson. And we're also working with the new auditors that the agency authorized so that we can complete the 2019 audit before the end of the calendar year, so that we can be in full compliance before the end of this calendar year. And the last point is there was an article talking about some payments that the previous administrations had made. We have prepared a memorandum, attorney-client privileged, that we'll share with the board members, and we'll be briefing everybody before the next meeting on those issues. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
But I just want to confirm for the record, as of to date, we have not sued anyone, have we?
No, we've just we've received some good compliance after sending some strongly worded demand letters.
And I think it should be noted. So, yeah, the mayor had to pull my coattail yesterday because, you know what, I've been very strong on following up. The agency has sent the letters. Our accountant has been in conversation and made very many calls to these pilot holders. And some we get response to, some we get half response to, some we get a payment for current, but not for the past. And so now I have started to call them with a very strong tone about that they need to get that in. And part of this is because there's been this lackadaisical approach to ensuring that the pilot payment and the compliance forms have been submitted in the past. And what I've been trying to explain to them that we're willing to work with you. We got to get you up to compliance, up to regulation, be up to date in your payments.
Brian, can you mute your phone so that we can hear the chief clear?
Up your payments up so that we can ensure that the agency is in good standing going forward. So if you're hearing any of that, I want you to know that yes, we're willing to work with them to do what we need to do, but we got to make sure that the city gets what the city is due, that the agency is remaining in compliance as much as we can, that we can make sure that we stay off of this revoke list. We don't need, and we're trying to do our best to put it in a good position. And that's what we will continue to do. I do want to thank Mike and Julie, as well as, of course, Raj in our office, because they have been working diligently to make sure that we're getting our pilot payments, that we're getting the compliance forms, that we also are in communication with the authority's budget office, and that we are doing what we need to do for this agency to be in good position. So it's been a bunch of heavy lifting, but I'm used to heavy lifting. Not that everybody knows that I'm used to heavy lifting, but heavy lifting I can do when I need to do and move it forward. And that's what we've been doing. So we are excited about having someone else come on board and help us in the business development director, because that will help to alleviate some of that while we continue to do what we need to do with the pilot folks.
And Dr. Morton, sure is on mute. And me pulling your coat was not telling you not to do that. It was, being clear that I had the back information. We spoke about, we're not campaigning, we're governing, but when we were campaigning, we did talk about that we were bringing our community into compliance, that the exception was no longer going to be the rule, but the rule was going to be the rule, that it was not about who donated to campaigns, that we turned a blind eye to their lack of compliance. Mount Vernon is open for business, but we're open for good business with good business partners. And so in order for our good business partners to benefit from some of the incentives that they've received, we need them to be good partners and make their payments on time. You know when your bills are due. We shouldn't have to chase you or ask you. You knew when your reports are due. We should not chase you or have to ask you. And if we have to continue that type of behavior, and if it is those agencies that are keeping us out of compliance, then yes, we'll have to ask for clawbacks, and we will have to maybe cut off relationships, because if those organizations don't comply, then it keeps the IDA out of compliance with the state, and it does not allow us to operate for the benefit of the Mount Vernon, Mount Vernon's economic development. And so if our tone has to be a little off after we've made 10 calls, if our letters get a little stronger because we've sent out multiple letters, then so be it. But we expect for those who benefit from doing business with the IDA also to be responsible and responsive when we reach out to you. And so it's not about friendships, it's not about personalities, it's about business. People can talk about the deficits on the city's part when we're not holding up our end, but they don't want to talk about the deficits on their part that they've been able to exploit because the city was not always on their job. Well, the city is now on its job, and we want you to be on your job for the benefit of Mount Vernon. And I say all of that with a great smile, because we want to be open for business, but we want to be open for good business. So thank you, Dr. Morton, for continuing to push. Thank you, Julie and Mike, for working with us around legal issues so that we can be back up to speed and in compliance. Everyone on this board has completed their required training with the state, so we are in compliance. We've brought in over 20 new policy and rules and regulations and standard operating procedures, updates to bring us into compliance. So the compliance is here, and we have been prepared to make our payments for 2019 second half and 2020 first half to the controller, with the exception of 1 or 2 of the pilots. But I think this is the most caught up that this agency has been in a long time. So I'm going to give us a collective pat on the back and thank you for taking extra time out of your schedule to ensure that the IDA is operating properly and serving Mount Vernon with the level of service and compliance that we promised. That's not campaigning, that's governing. There's a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think with that, that concludes our agenda for today. So I think at this point, Mayor, with your permission, we could take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
There being a second, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Meeting
opposition?
is adjourned.
There you go. Thank you.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.